My love. Have we met before?
If you have spent any time with vampire stories, you know this much is true. Every generation claims its own version of Dracula. Some people swear by the old novels. Others will tell you that the Coppola film with Gary Oldman is the closest thing to perfection the legend has ever had. That movie cast a spell that never really faded. It gave the Count a soul, a heartbreak, and a presence that walks straight into pop culture. Now a new vision has stepped out of the shadows. Luc Besson has taken the myth and rebuilt it from the inside out. Caleb Landry Jones steps into the role with a strange energy that feels both fragile and dangerous. It's not a copy of the old classic. It's a rival, a challenge, a retelling shaped by longing, isolation, and the kind of love that refuses to die. Fans have talked about this film with the same intensity people once reserved for the Coppola story. Some call it beautiful, some call it baffling. Everyone agrees it carries a mood you cannot shake. It feels like a dream you wander through, a fever, a memory, something familiar but not quite safe. So today we are walking into that world together. These are 20 strange flick facts about this new Dracula, how it was built, why it feels so different, and how it stands beside the classic so many of you hold close. By the end, you can decide for yourself whether this new version joins the legend or simply haunts its edges. Fact 1. A huge European budget for a vampire tale. One of the first things that stands out about this film is the scale behind it. Luc Besson poured nearly 45 million euros into bringing this version of Dracula to life. That kind of money is rare for a European vampire story. Most big Dracula films come straight out of Hollywood, backed by studios that want a monster or a spectacle. This one is different. It is French-produced, English-spoken, and visually ambitious in a way that feels almost feverish. What makes this even stranger is the way the film moved through the world. Instead of arriving everywhere at once like most large productions, it seemed to appear in pockets, drifting from one region to another almost like a whispered secret. People discovered it in waves rather than all at the same time, which gave it a kind of underground energy. That slow spread made the film feel rare, almost elusive. It carried the sense of a story that chose its own path instead of following the usual studio plan. For a Dracula film, that quiet wandering felt strangely fitting, as if the legend itself preferred to travel by night instead of stepping into the spotlight all at once.
You took my princess, the love of my life.
Fact 2. A director who chose a muse, not a star. Luc Besson chose Caleb Landry Jones long before cameras rolled. Not because he was a famous face or an expected choice. Besson said he felt a connection with him after working together on the film Dogman. He described Jones as someone he trusted creatively. In other words, he did not just cast an actor, he cast a presence. And it shows. Jones plays Dracula less like a traditional villain and more like a haunted man with a long ache in his chest. His performance is full of small tremors and quiet danger. At times he looks fragile. At times he looks like something old and impossible to kill. It is not Gary Oldman and it does not try to be. It is its own creature. That alone gives this film a tone that stands apart from the Coppola classic.
As if I don't belong in this time.
Fact 3. Finland and France create an unusual Dracula world. The filming locations are another unusual choice. Instead of Romania or the Carpathian Mountains you would expect from a Dracula tale, the crew went to Kumo in Finland for the winter exteriors. Snow, silence, a kind of lonely white landscape that almost feels timeless. Indoor scenes were filmed in the Paris region, giving the movie a mix of cold wilderness and warm European interiors. The result is a Dracula world that does not look like any earlier version. The film is English-spoken, French-financed, Finnish in its atmosphere, and old world in its soul. It feels like a collage made out of places that should not fit together but somehow do. The effect is unsettling in the best way. Fact 4. Critics in Europe are split down the middle. The early reviews from Europe show a split right down the middle. Some critics praise the movie for its ambition. They say it is beautiful to look at and emotionally intense. They describe certain scenes as dreamlike and overwhelming. They call the film brave for leaning so deeply into romance and tragedy. Other critics say the story is wild and uneven. They point out moments that feel chaotic or surreal. They say the plot bends in strange directions. These mixed reactions create an interesting tension. You can feel the film pulling people in two directions at once. Love it or question it, no one seems to forget it after they leave the theater. That alone is worth noting, because the Coppola film created the same kind of debates in the 90s. Passion on one side, confusion on the other. A true Dracula story always divides the room. Fact 5. A version of Dracula built on love, not fear. This script takes the original novel as the backbone, but Luc Besson focuses on the romantic thread far more than earlier versions. Dracula is not just a creature of hunger. He is a man who loses his wife in battle and then spirals into a centuries-long search to find her again. The story shapes him as a tragic lover broken by time, rather than a simple monster hiding in shadows. It creates a natural comparison with the Coppola film. That version also explored Dracula as a man destroyed by grief, but it balanced romance with fear. Besson goes even further, pushing love and longing to the front of the story. Some viewers see that as a bold choice. Others see it as a complete reimagining. Either way, it raises the question: can a modern film devoted to the wounded heart of Dracula match the emotional weight of the Coppola masterpiece? Only time and the American release will decide. Fact 6. A performance built on strange and beautiful movement. Landry Jones gives a performance that critics have called one of the most unusual takes on Dracula in years. Reviewers pointed out how he moves through the film with a physical style that feels almost otherworldly. He glides, he folds inward, he carries his body like someone who has lived in too many centuries and has forgotten how mortals stand. This is not a modern actor walking through a scene. Critics described it as a graceful physicality mixed with a strange tension, the kind that makes you wonder if he is drifting or stalking. Some said he looks like a creature pulled from a forgotten painting. Others called his performance magnetic, a presence that grounds the more fantastical parts of the story. His interpretation has been polarizing in the best way. Some viewers found him mesmerizing. Others called him unsettling and hard to read. But everyone agreed on one thing. Landry Jones does not play Dracula as a simple monster. He plays him as a wounded spirit wearing a body that no longer feels entirely human. Fact 7. Makeup that creates a living portrait. The makeup team approached Dracula as if they were painting a portrait that ages, rots, heals, and transforms. Every version of Jones in this film looks like a different chapter of the same tragic story. In France, audiences pointed out how his face sometimes looks bruised by time. Other times he looks almost holy, washed in moonlight. A few viewers even speculated that parts of the makeup were deliberately done to mimic imagery from classic religious paintings. That creates an odd effect. Dracula looks like a saint one moment and a creature the next. It is a strange blend that makes him unsettling without relying entirely on gore or shock. The Coppola film famously used practical effects to show Dracula's many forms. This version uses makeup to tell a quieter story about decay and devotion. Fact 8. A romantic obsession that feels like a curse. The core of this plot is not terror, it is obsession. Dracula creates an entire world around the idea that his lost wife might return in another lifetime. He builds agents, he collects scents, he travels through centuries chasing a ghost. In this story, love becomes a prison he cannot escape. It is not gentle or sweet, it is a weight he carries like a stone in his chest. Critics in Italy said this may be the most interesting part of the film. They called it a portrait of a love that has rotted from the inside out. Instead of fear of a monster, the fear comes from watching a man trapped in a cycle he cannot break. That gives the film a feeling that sits somewhere between tragedy and nightmare. Fact 9. A soundtrack that treats Dracula like a forgotten opera. The score has been described as sweeping, heavy, and emotional. It leans into strings and voices that feel almost operatic. When Dracula appears, the music swells like something from a lost stage production. It makes the film feel larger than life, almost theatrical in its emotions. Audiences commented that the soundtrack gives the film an uneasy elegance. The music does not rush. It drifts like a fog across the frame. It echoes the Coppola classic in the way it uses sound to make Dracula feel ancient, but it has a colder beauty that fits Besson's world perfectly. Fact 10. A Dracula film that rarely plays by the rules. Traditional vampire movies follow a rhythm, a bite, a chase, a hunt, a showdown. This film swerves away from that structure. It spends long stretches on atmosphere, memory, and sorrow. Some viewers found that refreshing. Others called it confusing. But everyone agreed it did not follow the standard line of a monster story. This odd structure makes it hard to predict what will happen next. It also explains why some critics say it may never replace the Coppola version, but could stand beside it as a very different creature. One is a gothic epic, the other is a romantic fever dream. That rivalry is part of what makes this film worth talking about. Fact 11. A perfume that becomes a trap for the living. One of the strangest elements in the plot is the perfume Dracula creates. It is not just a scent, it is a lure, a crafted memory, a promise of something the women in the story cannot name but feel drawn toward. In France, audiences compared it to a spell that works slowly and softly, like a whisper in the back of the mind. This idea comes from a long tradition of Gothic storytelling where an object carries power. But here the perfume becomes the symbol of Dracula's obsession. He uses it to search for his lost wife, convinced that her soul will recognize the fragrance he once gave her. It turns a simple bottle into a mythic object, something that feels beautiful and dangerous at the same time. Fact 12. A priest who hunts like a detective. Christoph Waltz plays the priest who hunts Dracula, and the role is not written like a typical monster slayer. He acts more like an investigator. He studies patterns, follows clues, and watches the world for signs that the Count has returned. His calm voice and sharp eyes give the story a sense of slow, rising threat. Critics said Waltz brings a cold intelligence to the film. He is not afraid of Dracula, but he is deeply aware of what the Count can do. His steady presence gives the audience a strange comfort. He is the one person in the story who does not fall under the spell of romance or sorrow. He sees Dracula as a problem to solve, not a mystery to understand. Fact 13. A Mina who feels like a reincarnation. The film takes a bold step with Mina. She is not just a woman caught in a dangerous situation. She's the echo of Dracula's lost wife. She resembles her. She dreams like her. She feels drawn to him before she even knows why. The story suggests that love can cross the barrier of time, but it also asks whether that kind of destiny is a blessing or a curse. Many critics have compared Mina in this new film to the Mina in the Coppola classic, where the reincarnation theme became one of the most talked about parts of the story. In that version, Mina carries the weight of a life she never lived, drawn toward Dracula by a connection that feels older than her own memories. Reviewers often described her as a woman caught between two destinies, one rooted in loyalty and one rooted in something ancient and unfinished. The new film taps into the same emotional tension. Mina does not feel like a simple victim. She feels like someone standing at the edge of two different stories, unsure which one belongs to her. That quiet tug of past and present gives the film a sense of emotional suspense and keeps the audience wondering whether her pull toward Dracula comes from love, fate, or something darker. Fact 14. A Dracula world that feels like a dream instead of a castle. One of the boldest choices in this film is the design of Dracula's surroundings. Instead of a classic Gothic fortress, the interiors feel dreamlike and unreal. Rooms stretch in quiet, impossible ways. Light and shadow move as if guided by memory rather than nature. This creates a clear echo of the Coppola classic, which also used surreal design instead of realism. But where Coppola used theatrical beauty and grand romance, this film uses the dreamlike style to show loneliness and obsession. It feels less like a castle and more like the inside of Dracula's mind. Fact 15. A siege scene that echoes the old legend. One of the most dramatic moments in the film is the siege on Dracula's castle. The priest and Jonathan Harker arrive with a group of men to break Mina free. They storm the grounds. They push through corridors. The tension builds slowly as they enter deeper into the heart of Dracula's world. This scene is the closest the film comes to traditional action. Critics said this moment feels like a tribute to the older adaptations, especially the silent era and the Coppola version. It has the same energy you get from a small group of mortals walking into a place where they do not belong. But instead of a battle full of fear, this one feels tragic. Dracula does not attack them with rage. He watches them with the look of a man who already knows how his story ends. Fact 16. A Dracula who finally lets go. This film gives Dracula an ending shaped by exhaustion rather than rage. When the men come for him, he does not fight with fury. He seems worn down by the weight of his own story, almost ready for it to end. Critics said his stillness in these moments feels more haunting than any battle scene. It echoes the tragic calm seen in the Coppola version, but here the emotion is simpler. This Dracula is not seeking redemption. He is simply tired. After centuries of longing, he reaches a point where letting go is the only thing left that feels human. Fact 17. A love story that tries to outshine fear. Besson pushes the romance so far that it becomes the true spine of the film. Dracula is driven by longing, not power. Mina feels pulled toward him even when she tries to resist. Their scenes together are soft and strange, more dream than horror. Some critics said this is the part that might rival the Coppola classic. That film balanced terror and desire. This one leans fully into desire and lets fear sit in the background. It is bold, and it will divide viewers, but it offers a new angle on an old myth. Fact 18. A century-hopping structure that feels like a fever dream. The story jumps across time without warning. One moment you are in old battlefields, the next you are in 19th century Paris. Instead of a clear timeline, it feels like you are drifting through Dracula's memories. This unusual structure is why some critics called the movie beautiful and confusing at the same time. It does not guide you gently. It drops you into his loneliness and lets you wander with him. Whether you love or question it, the atmosphere is unforgettable. Fact 19. A Dracula who sounds ancient when he speaks. One detail critics kept pointing out is the way Caleb Landry Jones uses his voice. He does not speak like a modern man. His tone drops into strange rhythms, almost musical, as if the words have traveled a long way just to reach the air. It adds a worn quality to every line, like each sentence carries centuries of memory behind it. Some viewers said the voice alone makes him feel older than the world around him. It gives the character an eerie weight and makes even simple dialogue feel unsettling. It is one of the quiet choices that sets this version apart from the Coppola classic and adds to the film's strange beauty. Fact 20. A new Dracula that stands in the shadow of a legend. Every modern Dracula film has to confront the Coppola version. The old one has style, beauty, heartbreak, and a performance from Gary Oldman that became iconic. This new film does not try to replace it. It tries to offer something different. Reviewers said it feels like a companion piece rather than a competitor. Two visions of the same myth. One grounded in gothic horror and grand drama. The other shaped by longing and sorrow. Whether it rivals or simply reimagines, it earns its place in the long line of Dracula legends. So that brings us to the end of our 20 strange flick facts. But before we close this out, there is one more thing worth sharing. Something small, surprising, and right at the heart of why this film is getting so much attention. Bonus fact: the film audiences cannot stop debating. Viewers kept returning to one simple idea. They said this might be the first Dracula film in years that feels truly unpredictable. Not because of the plot twists, but because it treats Dracula like a real person instead of a symbol. Is he a monster, a lover, a villain, or a man lost for too long? Coppola's film may finally have a worthy companion, even if it does not replace it. So here we are, two Draculas from two different eras. One from the 90s with velvet darkness and unforgettable style. One from today with a bruised heart and a restless soul. Both chasing the same legend from different sides of time. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think it will stand beside the Coppola classic or fade in its shadow? Will Caleb Landry Jones give us a Dracula we remember for decades, or will Gary Oldman remain the one true king of the night? Tell me more in the comments. I want to know which one you believe will carry the crown. If you want more strange truths buried in cinema history, like and subscribe. This is Strange Flick Facts, where we uncover the bizarre truths behind your favorite films.